about to
Hundreds of
start.
men there.
Everything.
We went to a wedding in Boca Shul.
Good morning, Ronnie.
Oh, that's how I done the shul.
Good morning.
Yeah, different part of Boca.
Can you hear me, Ronnie?
Yeah,
Boca.
just trying
I don't
to get it
know, that's
connected
a
here.
different part of Boca. Yeah, this right now is big geographic, huge.
We just lost a link here. I know how to work this. Oh, hold on. Okay. Moshe, I'm seeing your picture instead of my picture. Oh, I'm not supposed to see my picture. I guess that's my. All right. It's nice seeing your family. Hold on. Well, right now, Moshe Druin is the only one on from outside. Over here, we have Naftali and Jeff. So we'll give them another minute or two. Today, we'll be starting from the bottom of Lamed Dalad Amid Aleph, the new Mishnah Shlosha Minin. All right, 3 matters. And let me have a little bit more coffee. We'll wait for another person or two to come in. We're only doing like 1 page, the other side of 34. Good morning, and the professor's here. Good morning. Did you bring peas in a pod and grapes in the skin and seeds in the pulp? I was expecting you to bring all these like partial parts of grapes.
When you go home and get them.
It's okay. So before we start, there's a lot of in this 1/2 a page. All right, in this what's it? Amud. 1/2 is an amud. Yeah. Get the Amud Daf and whatever the requirement stuff. Do you see there's a lot of machlokas in, all right? As if that's something new, all right? Nothing new. And it's interesting if you think for a moment about Lahavdil, all right, the laws in the government, federal and state, regarding marijuana and hemp, all right? There's a lot of similarity, although it's in the other direction, between here with the grapes and grape byproducts and parts of grapes and what's allowed to a Nazir and what's not allowed to a Nazir. And because hemp, which has always been legal, whereas marijuana has up until recently been always illegal, is really the same plant. I don't care what people say. The difference is a person doesn't get high on hemp because it contains such a minute amount of THC. And by the way, I'm not a maven in this, so I might be saying things wrong, and I'm not a proponent of it, and I don't smoke it. Although when I go to the beach, the stink is in the air so much. At the beginning, I asked my wife, where is skunks here? And she explained to me what it was I was smelling. But anyway, that 0.3% that makes CBD gummies and things like that, 0.3, I think, percent content of THC or less makes it legal. That number I found I looked it up was arbitrarily made. You know, it's like, I don't know, they must have maybe had a bunch of lawmakers that got together in the room, smoked weed, and then they said, did you ever hide? Did you? And the ones that then they looked and said, oh, you had a little bit less than 0.3, so they called that. I have no idea. But the thing is, it's being taped. When you think about the laws, federal laws, state laws, this and that, there's a lot of machlokas. Why is something legal one place, illegal? It's almost like you can give a Nazir nowadays a card that says, you see the tomorrow, you're not allowed to touch these 3, but you could touch this or you could eat this because this isn't really part of the grape thing. It's like the hemp is okay because it's not part of the grape.
Right.
So that was the thought that came similar in my mind. So I just mentioned it. Okay. And also we're going to learn a concept today, a new concept of, maybe it's new to you, maybe it's not, of like minority and majority, how else can I say, miyut and riboy, minimizing and maximizing something. So when you give examples, sometimes people give a hyperbole, they rarely maximize, and sometimes they just give a tiny example. We tend to learn everything cloud prat, excuse me, prat to cloud, a specific example and a general example, right? So depending on how you learn power prat, or reborn meat, you interpret it a little bit different. That's one of the key reasons for the machlokas. I'm going to slightly turn to the left because everyone seems to be on my
One
left.
question, was that the Florida legislature or the New York legislature?
That was the difference between federal government and state government. Oh, you mean all the lawmakers
Yeah.
getting? That's probably Washington, D.C. Yeah.
You mentioned the 800 people in Morocco.
Can you imagine who?
The 800 people in Morocco.
The Moroccans, they're doing it there. Okay. Bottom of Lamed Dalet. Shlosha meaning asurin benazir. 3 matters are forbidden to a nazir. This is nothing new. We've been learning this all along. Hatuma, vatiglachas, vayotze me'agafen. Tuma means he's not allowed to get tummy. Tiglachas, he's not allowed to get a shave, basically a haircut all the way shaving his head. And products of the grapevine, which we'll get into detail. The chohayotze min hagefen mitzarfin ze im ze, and all products of the grapevine combine one with the other to compose the minimum amount necessary for liability. Right? So a nazir gets malchus if he has a kizayas of grape products. All right, so you can combine these grape products, and if you end up with kizayas, and that's what he ate, he would get kizayas, right? The eight chayat, he's not liable for, meaning for malchus, at shiachol min ha'novim kizayas. Oh, I just said that. All right, top of Lamed Hey. Mishnah Rishona Omeres, right? An earlier Mishnah said, Ad Yista Revius Yayin. He's not liable until he drinks a Revius of Yayin. Now, Revius of Yayin, that's a different measurement from the olive we just said. All right, that's a part of a log, or whatever it is, an egg. It's a different measurement. So, Rabbi Kiva Omer, Rabbi Kiva says, Afilu Sarah Pito V'Yayin, even if he soaked his bread in wine, just like we might soak bread in soup, when we eat soup, all right? And there is in it enough to add up to an olive's volume, Chayav. He's liable to lashes for consuming it. It's interesting because the answer he gives, it relates to the prior statement of the olive size, whereas the one right before it, the previous statement was talking about wine with drinking it having to be a revius. So apparently he's chayav differently on whether it's something you eat or something you drink. All right. And when you soak it in your bread, that's part of something you eat. It adds to the eating parts. Everybody with me still? Mm-hmm. Okay. The Mishnah continues. Okay, I look, the participants on YouTube is still just Moshe. Thanks for hanging in there, Moshe. And type in whenever you want to correct me. And he's liable for wine by itself, and for grapes by themselves, so he's naming all these parts of grapes. So he's chayav on each of those, and also in the zogim.
Just say, what are these? What is?
Okay, we're going
Oh,
to,
you're gonna explain.
yes, we're going to define these because you find in the definition is a machlokas. one side says that the chatzanim are the pits and the zug or whatever the word was, zagin is the skin of the grape, and they're separated by the pulp. And the other says no, the zagin is the pits and the chatzanim is the skin. So right there, you understand there's three parts to a grape. There's the grape skin, there's the pulp, and there's the pits on the inside. So you chayav on all of them. What's interesting is it'll ask even later on about, well, what if he doesn't eat he doesn't eat a grape, he doesn't eat the grape skin, he doesn't eat the pit. Is he chayav if he just skinned the grape, sliced open the grape, what's left, took out the pits, and just ate the pulp? Would he be chayav? All right, and you see the final teretz is, according to one person who interprets, because the pasuk says from the chatzanim ad the zogim, from here, from the pits to the grapes,
Skin.
to the skin, or the skin. The only thing that can include is the pulp.
Right.
So that's included too, according to that. So that's why it says it's full of these machlokas, but in the end, you come away pretty much with the same things. Okay, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Now, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, I always forget where he is on this. That's
He's high up on the first
he's
page.
high up, yeah, because he is not Rabbi Akiva's Talmud. That's it.
He's right here. See it?
Okay, I always miss him. So he's right there under Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Gamliel, up there. So we're not talking about the other two Rabbi Eliezers that are students of Rabbi Akiva. All right. So Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah, he says, he says he's not liable, meaning what we said before, like if you have to have an olive's worth, until he eats 2 grape seeds and the grape skin. All right.
Seedless grapes. Do they have those down?
Well,
That we have today, we have seedless grapes, right? None.
it's a good question. All right. I didn't even think about that. Well, then it doesn't include that. It's not included in the mass that you have to reach the measure. But I think he probably, who's this, Rabbi Elazar? He might be the one who holds in the end. This is used to teach us the Pope. I don't know. We'll find out. So now we get to the machlokes. What's the definition of chotzon and what's the definition of zogin? You see, one says one way, one says the other. Elo in chatzanim hein zogin. Okay. Hachatzanim elo achitzonim. So according to this view, the chatzanim is the grape skin because it's on the outside. All right. Hold on. Just this thing is jumping on the other. So give me a moment. Okay, Rachanim are the other parts. Good morning. All right. And the Zogim are the inner parts. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. So this is what Rabbi Yehuda holds. Rabbi Yossi Omer, but Rabbi Yossi disagrees. And Rabbi Yossi says, Shelo tita, so that you won't make a mistake. Think of the following. So he's going to give a mnemonic. Kizuk shel behema. The grape is like the bell that's hung on the neck of an animal, like a cowbell. All right. So he says, bell of an animal. Vapnimi, and the thing inside the bell, the one that rings the bell, is called an inbal. It's in the bell. That's interesting. It's called inbal. And the inner part, the clapper, is called the inbal. The Gemara focuses on the opening statement. Oh, so what was he saying? That if the outside, the outer part of the bell is called a zug. So he's of the opinion, therefore, that the zag is what's on the outside and the chatzanim is the pits. And the other person he argues with holds it the other way, which we just read. I think that was Rabbi Yehuda, right? The Gemara focuses on the Mishnah's opening statement. We'll go back to the Mishnah that was on the bottom of Daled Amud Aleph. Shlosha Minan Nasurim B'Nazir Tuma. 3 matters are forbidden. He can't become tummy. He can't shave his head, and he can't. What's the third one? He can't drink wine.
Yeah.
Or wine bread, everything we're talking about. Gemara infers Hayatza Mina Geffen, the products of the grapevine, yes, they are forbidden to a Nazir. Geffen Atzmo Lo, but the grapevine itself is not forbidden to him. So this is what I mentioned at the beginning. It reminded me of hemp. All right. It's like that's not illegal federally. It never was. But the leaf byproducts and everything else, which had a higher content, was illegal. Stop for just a more quickly. Based on this inference, the Gemara remarks, Masnisin, the low Rabbi Elazar, our Mishnah, which does not prohibit the grape leaves and shoots to a Nazir, does not accord, in other words, it's not in accordance with Rabbi Elazar. Elazar. It's the same Elazar you showed me. Eliezer. Yeah, they right here. That's why it always confuse me. Yes, it's Rabbi Eliezer, the higher one, not Rabbi Akiva students, but in my printing here, they print Rabbi Elazar. That's why I'm reading it down. Thanks for the correction. The Tanya or the Sanya, for was taught in the Brisa, Rabbi Elazar, Afilu Olin V'Lovin V'Mashma, even leaves and shoots are meant by the Torah's expression, anything made of the grapevine and are forbidden to a Nazir. The Gemara records a different version of the preceding observation. Right? It's almost like a machlokes on what we do, the machlokes we just did. Ika de Amri Las Asefa. There are some who say it in regard to the latter part of the Mishnah, which states, Eino chayav ela achiyochal mina novin kizayas. He's not liable until he eats an olive's volume of grapes. We mentioned this earlier, all right? And we said you can add up the things to the volume and then you're chayav malchus. From the Mishnah's specification of grapes, we infer min hanovin in. For eating an olive volume of grapes, yes, the Nazir is liable. Me'agefen atzmo lo. But eating parts of the grapevine itself, he's not liable. Right? Again, from the THC, yes, from the hemp, no. I mean, look at that one.
So like other parts of like some found
You're going to come in 2 minutes ago and now ask questions. No questions from the right side of the room. You reread it afterwards. Masni, or ask me downstairs. Masni, but yes, the point is the Gemara, the whole thing is about the 3 things. In the grape, there's the grapes, there's the skin, and there's the inside, but not the other stuff, not the leaves and not the, and I gave the analogy, just the thought of hemp and THC components, there's a difference. Legally, you're welcome. Masnisin, when you want to come closer, we'll stand on the left side. That way I don't have to turn my head to it. These guys. All right. This is Yonatan. Yonatan is available for matrimony. All right. He's young. He's very determined. He's a good-looking guy. Yes, you can't see it under his beard. And if you have any questions, please just call Daf Yomi. It's Smith. Yeah, you don't need a resume. He's such a mention. Davin's behind me. This guy covering up. One more look. One more look at. All right, here he is. Available. Send your daughter. Okay. Okay.
This is like Good Morning Miami.
Masnisin de Loka Rabbi Elazar. Our Mishnah is not an agreement to revelation. The Tanya was to the Brisa. Rabbi Elazar says, did I just read this? Sometimes this thing, Afilu alim v'lulavim b'mashra, even leaves and shoots are meant by the terrorists, anything made of the grapevine. Oh, so here they bring another example where it actually says, no, wait a minute, even the leaves and grapevine and the shoots are okay, anything made of the grapevine. So it's like the hemp is illegal for the Nazir in this case. The Gemara now investigates the basis of this dispute between Rabbi Elazar and the rabbis. But my kamiflige, and what do they argue? Rabbi Elazar, my wife is always so upset with me. She says, why do you always have to rebuttal everything? Why are you always arguing? I said, what do you want? That's what we do in the Gemara. If someone says one thing, the other rabbi argues with it. I said, I start the morning rebuttaling. I come home, I'm saying they're still in a rebuttal mood. I have to somehow learn how to go to default of do not rebuttal. Oh man. Rabbi Eliezer Darish Riboyu Miyut. Oh, Miyute. This one I mentioned at the beginning. We, at the beginning of davening, 13 ways the Torah is learned, and everything we're learning about this cloud of price, prat to clouds. All right, we never do this way of minimizing and maximizing, or amplifications and limitations as to understand a pasuk. All right, I was trying to think of an example on the way here. This is one I came up with. If someone says to you, where do you live? You say, I live in North Miami Beach. And you say, and then they say, where? And you say, where all the frum Jews live. All right. So that's minimizing the generality of North Miami Beach. A klal prat would be klal. I live in North Miami Beach, where all the green garbage cans are. Why is that a prat? Because green garbage cans are Miami-Dade, and the Miami-Dade that's within the donut hole of North Miami Beach, which has black garbage cans, have green garbage cans. So there you're definitely giving an example. All right, now if you say green and black, you have the problem that what about the black ones that are on the other side of North Miami, or greater? But I'm just trying to think of an example. So it depends on what you do to limit or not. But it's two ways of looking at something. Rabban Dashe Cloud Pride. All right. As the Gemara will proceed to explain, certainly not using my analogy. Rabbi Eliezer Darish Rivui Umiyut. Rabbi Eliezer expounds verses in terms of amplifications as limitations as follows. So let's answer. Miyayin v'shecha yazir miyet. He's to abstain as a nazir from wine and aged wine. All right. So what is the Torah done? It's limited. Is to abstain from nazir, from wine and aged wine, but not other types of liquors or beers. Right. The Torah then states from anything made of grapevine. Here the Torah is amplified. The rule is that when the Torah is limited and then amplified, it's amplified in order to include everything that can be comprised by the amplification. Now that's actually very similar to the klal of prat, because the klal of prat, prat to klal, because in the prat you give an example, and then the klal comes to expound on it and add to it. The prat is specific, the klal is general, right? Like the cola, more. My meat, and what does it exclude? Mi'et shvista. It includes the woody branches of the vine. So we had been discussing till now that there was no Esau on the stem, and now he's saying they're using the woody branches of the vine. I'm not sure if that's the same or not, but again, depending on how they look at it, it's not exactly the same. The rabbis expound using the verses in the terms of generalizations and specifications. as follows. Miyain b'shecha yazir prat. All right. He's to abstain as a nazir from wine and aged wine. So that's specific. Mikol asher yaseh hagefen migefen hayayin klal. From anything made of the grapevine, that's generalization. Mechatzanim yadzug, all right, chazor uprat. Finally, the Torah concludes from the seeds to the skin. Here the Torah is again specifies prat, uchlau, uprat. The rule is that when the Torah states a specification followed by a generalization, followed by another specification, you cannot derive anything other that's similar to the specification. So again, what that means is, had we stopped just with prat or klau, we would have added to the generalization of the grapes. All right, the initial examples of the grapes we had in the Gemara, right? The fact that after the generalization, the pasuk adds in, all right, adds in additional specifications. It's now saying you can't generalize so much. The generalization has to be limited still within the edible food products, and we're not going off into the woody parts or branches and leaves parts.
So that's a general statement followed by something more specific. By that specific.
No, it's a specific followed by general, followed back by a specific. If it was just followed by the general, you've expounded the specific and added more. But if you add, like in this case, the under pasuk, extra words that are specific, you've gone back. It's prat, uchlau, uprat, and now you're again limiting the general. Not so much, a little bit, but it's still going to be so. Right? Prat before you like that part. Just prat. I don't like it. I don't have enough coffee here, but just one second.
What?
Feel like Red Skelton. I make myself flare. Prat meforish pre solet pre. Just as the specification is specifically fruit of the vine and the waste of the vine, cold pre, solid pre. So to any product of the vine, similar to the fruit and the waste of the fruit, is prohibited to a nazir. So they're talking about like vinegar. Vinegar is considered like a waste of the grape. It's not coming from the stem or the wood, but it's coming from even arak. The original arak was like made from the pits. I heard that. Actually, I heard that on Rabbi Stefansky, who I listened to get, but wasn't for this stuff. He interviewed a Nazir, and the Nazir was telling, because they asked him questions. What do you drink on Pesach? It's very, what do you, so I think he answered Iraq. I think so. So it's kind of wild. So it's worth taking a look at his interview. It's for Daf 33. Yeah.
I think so.
Isn't it fermented? So maybe that's non-Pesach, he drinks it. I don't know, but his answers were really different. And if you want to see a modern nowadays Nazir, actually on page 33, Lamed Gimel, he has this interview, the guy comes after, he asks him to take his hat off and say, fall out. All they have to do is come over here and see all the Rastafarians. We can show what the real long hair looks like, but it was very cool. All right. Kudos to Rabbi Stefansky. All right. Ima Haprat, but you didn't help me in preparing the share because you hadn't done Daf Lamed Daled yet when I was trying to. Ima Haprat Beforish Pri Gamor. If one should counter that, we should reason instead, just as the specification is specifically a finished fruit of the grapevine, Afkol Pri Gamor. So to any finished fruit of the grapevine is included in the prohibition. Amart, you would respond, Amarta, you would respond in Cain, if so, what has scripture left you to include in its meaning, which it didn't state explicitly? And it would say, well, no, what was the extra cloud, extra plot that wasn't mentioned in the initial one? Haksivi, another lachim vivation, fresh and dried grapes. All right, when we initially mentioned it, we didn't mention the difference between we said grapes, we said grape skins, and we said pits. All right. Now they're talking about fresh grapes, which means they're not even ripe. So they're probably not even considered grapes, or dry grapes, which is essentially California raisins, I guess, almost, you know. Haksive, this image of all these guys playing music. Okay, all right. Ma haksive, why are they written explicitly? Yayin the chametz, wine and vinegar. Haksive, why they are written? Why they're written explicitly? Ha'en alecha ladun kilashon achron ela kilashon rishon. Thus, you cannot reason according to the second suggestion, which characterizes the specific strictly as finished fruit, but only according to the first suggestion, which characterizes the specification simply as fruit. Help me here. I think he's saying that the last prat, when you do it, wait, was only according to the first suggestion, that it still has to be within the definition of the first prat. I'm not saying again, I'm questioning. All right, let me read it again. Ha'en alecha ladun haksivi. The question is yan and chametz. Why is that written? All right, why are they written explicitly? Wine and vinegar. Haksive, why they're written explicitly? Ha'en alecha ladun kelashon achron ela kelashon rishon. You cannot reason according to the second suggestion, which characterizes the specification strictly as finished fruit. I assume that's the last prat, all right, which we said early grapes and late dry grapes, but only according to the first suggestion, which characterizes the specification simply as fruit. Let me just read the commentary here. And this immature grapes and wormy grapes are forbidden. Since it cannot be that the Torah constructed such a sequence for nothing, is evident the first suggestion is the correct one. I know. Go over this later. We'll have plenty of time before done. Mechosh is so fatal, the rabbis called double. And since ultimately we include everything that it resembles the particular, which would be the cloud. Matam with Loma. Now we come to the final prat. Why does the scripture state from the seeds to the skin? To tell you, whenever you find the specification and the generalization, you may not extend and expound it to include only things similar to the specification. Rather, the generalization becomes added to the specification. Until you get another prat, which is what happened here in the pasuk, in the way that it was specified for in the case of the Nazir. The Gemara focuses attention on the part of the foregoing argument, repeating that part verbatim. All right. So now we're talking about klal uprat uklal, but it's really prat uklal uprat, because there's two prats and one klal. Amamar, the master said, Ma prat mefarish priv solat priv, just as the specification is specifically fruit of the vine and the waste of the fruit of the vine, all right, meaning the waste is basically the vinegar. Of kol pri sola pri, so to any product of the vine similar to the fruit and the waste of the vine is prohibited. The Gemara explains the term used in the statement pri and vei. Fruit is a reference to grapes. Sola pri mai, what is referred to by the waste of the fruit, chametz, vinegar. Afal kol pri mahi, what is so to any product of the vine similar to the fruit? Kuhake, immature grapes. Af kol dipsulas pri mahi, what is included by the so to any said in regard to the waste of the fruit. You know, they keep on trying to redefine and redefine. Rav Kahana says, this comes to include wormy grapes, as if you're going to eat wormy grapes. But the Gemara, I want you to know, the other day my wife and I were shopping. First, we went to Aldi, we wanted to pick up grapes along with fruit. The grapes looked all horrible. So we said, now we'll go into Publix. So we went to Publix to pick up more stuff. The grapes were also horrible. So I don't know if any of you got good grapes, but the other day, the grapes were all looking, I was thinking this, like wormy grapes. I mean, they just didn't look, brown. Right. Anyway, Vadzog to the skin, Ravina said, Lisuye devein beinim. This comes to include what's between the seeds, as we mentioned earlier, and the skin, that is the pulp of the grape. Because up until this point, we never mentioned the pulp, because that's not how people eat grapes. They don't squirt off the skin, cut it, get rid of the, like seedless, and then they don't sell seedless pulp. They sell seedless grapes. Not the pulp, the pulp. I don't know what it sounds like. The master said above, if one should counter that, we should reason instead, just as the specification is specifically a finished fruit of the grapevine, so too any finished fruit of the grapevine is included in the prohibition. Amata, you would respond, in Cain, if so, what is the scripture left for you to include in its meaning, which it didn't state explicitly? Meaning, what's mamish in the last part? Anavim lochem libation, fried and dried grapes, which was said before. Fresh and dried grapes. Fried grapes, that would be a new meichel, to sell. All right. Haksivi, why they are written explicitly? Why yain v'chametz, wine and vinegar? Haksivi, why they are written explicitly? Ein alecha ela kalashon ladun kalashon achron ela kalashon rishon. Thus, you cannot reason according to the second suggestion, which characterized this specification strictly as finished food, but only according to the first suggestion, which characterizes the specification simply as fruit. And since ultimately they include everything that resembles the specification, what does the scripture, am I repeating the same thing again? Why the scripture state from seeds to skin? Again, to tell you, wherever you find this specification, followed by a generalization, you may not extend it and expound it to include only things similar to the specification. I thought I just read this. But you can add, but the generalization becomes added. I just read this. Until you add the final part, and then it limits again. That's it, we're done. In summary, the takeaway is there's always a machlokas. But the bottom line, what I learned from this is that, first of all, when you have the prat, klau, or prat, which when you look at Rabbi Yishmael, you won't find it. It says klau, when we look klau, or prat, or klau. No, prat, klau. what we find the foot.
It's the third one of these.
Just read it. Because it doesn't say prat to klal prat, it said,
It says, just like a little while, we say, it says, klal product klal, come, iata don eleket ein haprat.
right,
You don't judge. You don't-
but it says klal prat u'klal.
It doesn't say klal product klal, but it's adds few other explanatory words.
Yeah, so it's explained there, but they don't use the title prat u'klal and prat. That's what threw me off trying to find it in there. And the other thing is that some people hold, the machlok is, do you look at it from understanding it that way? Or do you understand it from a limitation and a maximization? You know, North Miami Beach in the Jewish area, or the garbage cans, kind of like, or you know, that kind of thing. And you also learn that if you forget this Gemara, look up the laws of hemp and marijuana. You see the federal laws. You see that it was made arbitrary. The hemp based on that 0.3% or something that someone made up. And then you have the state laws that this state says it's legal. This one says it's legal only with a permission card. And this one says it's legal with a permission card, but we don't really enforce it. All right, it's like totally ridiculous, you know, all this. And can you imagine a Nazir walking around and he has a card, a medical exemption card, and yet that's very similar, Alhamdulillah, with the Nazir Shloshim, the Nazir Shimshon, Nazir Olam, that's through Nazirim. Oh, aren't you a Nazir? What do you mean you can't go a haircut now? He goes, no, I'm this kind of Nazir, you know, and they all have their own heart. So, I forgot to shut this off. Goodbye. Sorry about that. Goodbye.
So because of this